Here's my next attempt at some coconut yogurt. Again, this time with the Mega SporeBiotic probiotic. And before we get into that, I just want to mention with the Ultimate Probiotic Yogurt Maker, they have this kind of neat thing that they do where if you post on social media that you've bought one and you share a picture or video or whatever, then they will actually send you some extra containers. You have to let them know that you did it. There's a form that you fill out on their website, but I did that, and even though I'm in Canada, they did actually send me some new containers. So that's what they sent me, and I had already bought the container with the small ones, which I actually really like as well, and they're great for storing smaller batches in the fridge too. So, but I wanted some bigger ones too, just to have all of the options available, because I do like kind of making one big batch on one side, or even two big batches. So this is my first time unboxing this, and I was quite happy to see what we've got there. You can see they've got the white plastic lids there too, which I also want to talk about. I don't, first of all, wash those in the dishwasher because I just want to be careful with the plastic, because I've had really good quality containers, not from this company, just, Pyrex and that kind of thing, and those lids tend to break eventually if you put them in the dishwasher. So I'm just not doing that with any of these lids, whether the big ones or the little ones. And I also don't love cooking with plastic lids, even though it's a fairly low temperature. So I had this idea to try, and I actually have to say I like how it turned out, and I hope to keep on doing it. What I did was bought a food grade silicone mat. I just bought it on Amazon. You can probably get it at Walmart and other places too, and cut a piece out to fit. So you can see what I've got there. And what's really cool is that it just sits nicely on top, and you're not getting any plastic in there. So you can see it's quite soft and flexible, which was really nice. And what I do is measure around the outside of the lid, because you want it to be a little bit bigger than the whole container. Don't just use the glass container. So I just took a pen and measured around, and I fully expected I was going to have to really scrub to get the pen off, but actually I managed to cut it in such a way that the pen wasn't really there afterwards. So this worked out really nicely, and I just highly recommend trying this because it really worked so well. And you'll also see that I left the corner of this hanging out so that it basically is a tab that you can use to pull it off really easily. And that worked out to be super handy, and I've now cut two of those, one for each container if I want to put both whole containers in there. And then what I want to do as well is just cut a piece off to lay across all of the small ones when I'm cooking with those containers, because that should just keep them all really nicely set in there, and I can still peel one up if I need to, if I want to check the temperature, which is a good idea to do periodically. And it just worked out to be really nice in the end. It worked great, and I think this is how I'm going to keep on making the yogurt, whether it be a higher temperature yogurt or the lower temperature like the L. reuteri and L. gasseri yogurts that you want to keep around 100 degrees. Now the one that I am doing today is actually like I said, the SporeBiotic, so it's a little bit more unknown, let's put it that way. We don't really know what the best temperature is for that. I haven't been able to find an answer on that, so I'm just trying things out. So I've started again with 2 cans of coconut milk, which are very heavy in water content, sadly, but there's nothing I can do about that. And I'm just putting a little bit back into the can here, and then I'm adding in my tablespoon of agar to act as the thickener, and it seems to work really nicely for 2 cans. So just do your measurement based on that, and you'll get a pretty good thickening agent happening there. It's not gummy, but it's a little bit, maybe might even be a little thicker than you want it. But if you drained it afterwards, like for Greek yogurt, I think you'd probably find that that's a nice creamy consistency. And you can see there I've also added in 1 teaspoon of coconut sugar, just to give the probiotics a little something extra to feed on. I haven't done that before, but I seem to do well with coconut in general, so I thought that might be a safe one to try. There's some other options I might try in the future as well, because as I've said in other videos, I can't do the inulin, and I don't do sugar either. Again, I used a frother to mix this up just to get it all nice and creamy. I find that really helpful. It seems to just incorporate everything nicely. And of course I've got it on the burner, so I'm watching it very closely and just waiting for it to come to a boil and then try to sit to a boil. And you'll see eventually I'm going to put my thermometer in there so I can just keep an eye on the temperature. I have had people tell me that you definitely should be keeping it at 180 or even 190 degrees for like 10 minutes. That is really hard to do with coconut milk though, because it's thick and fatty. It doesn't love that. The boiling, you can see how the bubbles come up. It's not even in boiling range yet, and yet it's already making these big bubbles that are popping and kind of making a mess. So there comes a point where you just have to be super careful. And if you've seen all my videos on yogurt, you probably noticed I did have one where it did completely boil over and made a big mess on the stove. So that is not ideal. So I do watch it very closely and make sure that it doesn't come to a full rolling boil at any point. So I just keep on stirring it to try and keep it as settled as possible. And once it's hit the full temperature that I'm happy with, then I just stick it in a pan of cold water to help decrease the temperature. Now, I know a lot of people like to also put a lid over top, and that's totally fine too. That helps to keep any contaminants from landing in there, and definitely there is a risk when you leave it open like I have been doing. So in the future I might cover it, but I do find that when you leave it open like that, it's going to cool down a lot faster, which is also a bonus, I think. So that's kind of how I do it. And I actually found this time with trying to keep it at the high temperature for a little bit longer that the pan of cold water actually got warmed up much faster when I put the pot in there. So I did have to switch it out a little bit faster. Last time I don't think I even switched it out. It actually was not a big deal to just let it sit. And once it's down to a temperature I'm happy with, then I took my 1 Mega SporeBiotic capsule and tried as gently as possible after I got the cat hair off of there, because we have cats, so they're everywhere. And then try to very gently stir it in, which is actually a bit of a challenge because it kind of likes to bulk up in little bits, and then you gotta kind of scrape them down and pat them out. And so I stirred it in as best I could, and as far as I could tell, it was all good. And then drop it into my new jar. And once I got the water levels right, I try to keep a little bit warmer water in there to get started so that it doesn't have to warm up once I turn it on. And put my little lid on and off we go. So I did the standard of 108, which is what it naturally starts at. I thought that would be good to try, and set it for 24 hours this time just to see what we end up with as far as the difference goes. And you can hear it does give you a little quiet beep when it's done. It's not very loud, but it does beep. So I know some people have asked, does it beep, doesn't it? Some people haven't heard it beep. Some people don't like the beep. So it just depends on what you're looking for. It's a quiet beep, but there is one to let you know that it is done. And yes, you could probably let it sit for a little while after. Not a big deal. You have to be careful pulling that silicone lid off because it can make kind of a mess. So I do keep a plate nearby just to put it on right away. And you also want to kind of dump any of the water from the top off of it so that it's not just dripping down into your yogurt. Now this is the big disappointment right here, that it got up to 140 degrees. I set it for 108 and it got to 140. Now I didn't put anything on the bottom to protect it from the element, but I really did not expect it to get that high. And I can also say that despite the fact that it got up to be so high, the yogurt seems to have come out okay anyway. I don't know if it means that it's got lower probiotics or anything like that. It does seem to be acting exactly the same way as the first batch I made did, and that one did not get up to super high temperature. So it seems to have made it through okay, and we'll see how it affects my digestion in the coming weeks. And you can also see that there's some gray on the surface there. That concerned me a little bit. But what I did ultimately was put it in the fridge let it sit overnight, make sure that it was really good and fully solidified, and then scraped the top off. And it seems to be okay. I actually was a little bit concerned I might have to just throw it out. I was a little scared of it because I didn't want to do anything to make my gut worse, but I ended up being brave and taking a bite, and it tastes and smells exactly like the first batch that I made. So, which is still not great. It's not a nice flavor at all. I actually still mix it in with other yogurt that I like better because it is good for your gut. It's good for your health, but I don't like the flavor. We haven't conquered that yet. I need to find a way to make it so that it does help have a lot more probiotic. That's what we want, but also so that it's edible. Like, I would not want to eat a half a cup of this as it is. Even with flavorings or fruit or anything else in it, I would not like it still because it's got that slightly vomit-like flavor to it. It's gross. But I can tell you, having eaten enough of it now from the first batch and now a little bit from the second batch, that it's okay. It does do what it's supposed to do, even though it's not a very nice flavor. So it didn't make me sick, just so that you know. And apparently that gray stuff is not too big a deal. When I did scrape it off, unfortunately I forgot to get recording on that. But when I did scrape it off, the whole top was a little bit discolored, which I have had happen with other yogurts before because it sort of like oxidizes or something on the top, and you can just scrape that off, or some people just eat it like it is. I don't know, but and with a different kind of yogurt, I have eaten it without worrying about scraping the top off, and it was totally fine. So just because the color's a little bit off doesn't mean that the whole thing is like toast, So it turned out to be okay. This has actually been the most difficult batch that I've made and the most problematic, and I'm not really sure what to blame. I think there's a mix of things going on. I don't know if it's just that the sugar was not ideal to add, and I'm not sure if the higher temperature was a factor as well, because that's a very high temperature, and I don't know if it did end up killing some of the probiotic. That's possible. I hope not, because it's a really, really expensive probiotic. Now, I have heard that this can happen with some of this company's yogurt makers, but what is really exciting is that they stand behind their product. So even though I've had it for more than a month, I did contact them through Amazon and let them know what had happened, and they agreed that that's not good. And so they are sending me another one to replace it for free, and I don't have to do anything and just wait for it. So I'm really happy to learn that, because that means that they are standing behind their product, and I'm looking forward to having just a replacement one so that I can keep on going, and hopefully it will go better. I have heard that exact thing happen to some other people. Lots of people have found that they're great the first time around and they don't have to get a replacement one. So this one turned out to be the other category, but it's all going to work out fine from what I can tell. So I just want to let you guys know that they are standing behind their product, and so I'm going to keep on using them and keep on making the yogurt, and look forward to letting you guys know how it goes as I get the new unit, whenever that happens, and that might be a while from now, but because I'm in Canada, it'll take a little bit to get here. So I think at this point I can say that I still definitely recommend the ultimate probiotic yogurt maker. So thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful and that you enjoyed the tips, and let me know if you end up using the silicone mat as your lid, because I'd love to see how this works for other people as well. And would love to hear how you are finding your yogurt maker, whatever brand you've got, because it's always good for us to get lots of that information out there to see what the best products are and how they work. So thank you again for checking this out, and I hope it was helpful, and God bless.